Before we get on with the podcast, I'd like to mention that I now have 3 books for sale on Kindle. Recommended Reading for the True Conservative, Bad Democrat, and now Evil Liberal. All available for $3.99 or through Kindle Unlimited. Now, on with the podcast.
I'm a gamer. Do we have any gamers? What's your game? Rocket League. Tic-tac-toe. Sometimes till 7 o'clock at night. Walking can be difficult for me at times. I do worry about tripping and falling, so I wear a helmet. I also worry about looking ridiculous, so I carry a skateboard.
Good morning. It's Saturday, Rules Saturday, August the 1st, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have no free lunch, rules for retrogrades, and the Mossad. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David Bahnsen.
Social organization. The basic problem of social organization is how to coordinate the economic activities of large numbers of people. Even in relatively backward societies, extensive division of labor and specialization of function are required to make effective use of available resources. In advanced societies, the scale on which coordination is needed to take full advantage of the opportunities offered by modern science and technology is enormously greater. Literally millions of people are involved in providing one another with their daily bread, let alone with their yearly automobiles. The challenge to the believer in liberty is to reconcile this widespread interdependence with individual freedom. Milton Friedman. The individual human action embedded in this miracle of social cooperation is both caused by a free and virtuous society, and the free and virtuous society is enhanced by this social cooperation. The individual and collective benefits of the social contract are a sight to behold. Interventions from disinterested third parties are its greatest threat.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. The core dynamics, entitlement, lack of empathy, need for control, are still intact. They've just been temporarily concealed beneath a layer of charm and fake insight. What makes this tactic especially dangerous is that it taps into our emotional wiring. The version of us that once trusted them may still exist, even if only faintly. That part remembers the connection, the promises, the potential. When the liberal revives their ideal self, it can trigger doubt about our current path. We might start to question whether we've been too harsh, too closed off, or too quick to walk away. That self-doubt is precisely what the liberal is counting on. They want us to second-guess our strength. They want us to trade our boundaries for hope. They may also start mirroring our current growth. If we're into healing, they'll talk about healing. If we found new passions or goals, they'll suddenly share the same interests. This is not connection. It's camouflage. They're trying to blend into our new reality, hoping we won't notice that they're still the same person underneath. And because they often say the right things, it can be difficult to discern truth from performance. We start to ask ourselves, what if they really have changed? What if this is a breakthrough? These questions are understandable, but they're also dangerous in the presence of a manipulator. Liberals do not reflect in the way emotionally mature people do. They do not grow in the way healthy individuals grow. Their version of change is usually reactive, not proactive. It's a response to losing control, not a desire for real transformation. And once they sense that the illusion has worked, that you've softened, reconnected, or re-engaged, the mask slips again. The ideal self vanishes, replaced by the same patterns of blame, deflection, and emotional chaos. This cycle can repeat as many times as we allow it. Each time it does, it becomes harder to trust our own judgment. That's part of the damage. The liberals' ability to switch personas to become exactly what we want at the exact moment we're ready to move on creates confusion. And confusion is fertile ground for manipulation. Because when we're confused, we delay decisions. We rationalize red flags. We hold space for someone who's never truly held space. For us, understanding this trick requires emotional discipline. It demands that we see past the performance and remember the full history, not just the moments that felt good. The liberal's not showing us their true self. They're showing us the self we want them to be. And that projection is a tool, not a promise. It's a psychological mirage designed to lure us back into a role that serves them, not us. When the liberal realizes we become too emotionally grounded, too self-aware, and too independent to fall for their typical manipulations, they may resort to a tactic that is both final and deeply destabilizing. Erasure. This is not just a silent treatment or cutting us off temporarily. This is a calculated attempt to pretend we never existed in their life, to wipe our presence, our impact, and our importance from their narrative entirely. The liberal engages in erasure not as a form of healing or detachment, but as a weapon to reassert dominance by invalidating our significance. It's a psychological retaliation designed to hurt us in a very particular way, not by engaging with us, but by making our absence feel invisible, irrelevant, and meaningless. This maneuver is profoundly disorienting because it strikes at a core human need, the need to matter. We all want to believe that our relationships, no matter how painful, has had some meaning, that our time, energy, and vulnerability were not completely in vain. The liberal exploits this by making a dramatic show of moving on as though we were a mere footnote. They might block us on social media, delete pictures, remove shared memories, and replace us publicly with someone new. And they do it quickly, often with eerie speed, as if to signal that our chapter in their life was a mistake and that they're swiftly correcting. But what's critical to understand is that this erasure is not genuine detachment. It's not the act of someone moving forward with clarity and peace. It's an aggressive psychological tactic designed to provoke a reaction. Liberals don't erase us because we meant nothing to them. They erase us because we meant too much in ways that threaten their control. Our strength, our resistance, our ability to leave undermine their power, and now, by erasing us, they're attempting to reestablish the narrative where they are in charge, where they decide who matters, and where they alone define the truth. Erasure is also a form of image control. Liberals are obsessed with perception. They cannot tolerate being seen as the one who is abandoned or defeated. So when we leave them or when we resist re-engagement, they move quickly to rewrite the story. In this new version, we were toxic, unstable, forgettable. They craft this tale for others, but they also crafted it for themselves. The liberal needs to believe that we were never really important because accepting our significance would require admitting that they lost something valuable. And liberals do not tolerate loss. They reframe it as rejection, as weakness on our part, or as evidence that we were never on their level to begin with. This tactic often involves public displays. They may suddenly start showcasing new relationships, new successes, or exaggerated happiness. It's performative, and it's timed to coincide with your departures or silence. These displays are not signs of authentic joy. They're carefully designed messages. The liberals telling us and everyone else, look how quickly I've moved on. The intention is not just to hurt us, it's to punish us for our independence. By pretending they're unaffected, they aim to undermine our value. It's an emotional slight meant to make us question whether any of it, our connection, our effort, our pain, ever truly mattered. At a deeper level, erasure is an act of control over memory. Liberals seek to dominate not only our present, but our past. They do this by rewriting shared experiences, denying previous conversations, or recasting events in a way that serves their narrative. If we try to bring up something that happened, they may act as though it never occurred. If we remind them of something they once said, they'll deny it or laugh it off. This psychological gaslighting is meant to distort our sense of reality, to leave us questioning our own memory and our own story. It's one of the most destabilizing experiences a person can go through. The liberal may also attempt to erase us through triangulation. They may speak negatively about us to others, minimizing our impact. They replace us quickly with somebody else they can parade around. This isn't just about appearing happy, it's about controlling the story. They want mutual acquaintances to believe that they were the stable ones, that they were wronged, or that they upgraded. It's all part of the erasure. It's not enough that we're gone. They want to appear as if we were never worth holding on to in the first place. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, rules for retrogrades.
Rule 5. Risus bellum est. Laughter is war. The only possible response by a sane man to an insane claim is laughter and ridicule. Never buy radical premises. In the course of political badinage, do not settle for reason where action is due, and vice versa. This logic extends with a special force to the needfulness of the scornful guffaw. Laugh openly at your radical opponent's insane, constant recusals of the Christian West. With good reason, the expression, "I will not dignify that claim with a response," bears profound value against radicals, especially in the clownish cultural and political scene today. The act of laughing makes for a devastating weapon of cultural war because there is simply no dignified reply to it. If a man responds line item to a radical's insane proposition in a way which suggests that it deserves more dignity than it actually merits, moderate and incautious listeners nearby may be persuaded in the wrong direction. If they are not persuaded all the way in the wrong direction, they will at the very least lose interest in the prolix dialogue between you and the radical, assuming as they walk away that the truth is probably something of a median between the two positions they heard. On the other hand, if they had heard you simply laugh at the idiotic blasphemy leveled by the radical, your punchy laughter would have well served both their curiosity and their short attention span. In other words, one need not outsmart oneself by avoiding the intuitive schoolyard approach of ridicule. Trust your gut, especially when it tells you to laugh at radical claims. Retrogrades who fail to respond with laughter will end up, in good faith, buying dangerous premises that would have more easily been rejected by simple ridicule in the first place. Not only does this needlessly lengthen what should be quick, pithy conversations with radicals, but more importantly, it lends false credibility to incredible and neurotoxic ideas, even in the shrewd mind of the retrograde. The conventional wisdom by old guard types within the ranks of humble Christianity or center-right politics would be either to listen compassionately without reply or to reason it out slowly in dialogue. Both of these replies are gravely mistaken, which costs their users efficacy and street cred. The latter is earned by satisfying the gut instincts. For example, the proposition that men have penises is now supposed to be controversial. Radical haters of the Christian so-called patriarchy have seen to it that the most fundamental Christian teachings on human sexuality and pretty much everything else are now received as dubious and hateful. This represents abject madness. Listening compassionately to a confused person of this persuasion is never a bad idea in the one-on-one context. But a retrograde, as we have said above, is exceedingly unlikely to find himself in private dialogues with transsexuals. Dialogue will usually be of the public sort. Accordingly, some form of winsome public reply will be needed. Don't borrow trouble. Take shortcuts where they present themselves. The derisive laugh will not be available for all the vast array of radical claims, many of which will have to be forensically dispelled. But where laughter is sufficient, use it. Any thoughtful or even unthoughtful reply, aside from scornful laughter, tendered to a radical who attempts to rebut the obvious fact that only men have penises, will automatically ennoble the inane notion that natural sexuality can be altered. Replying with diligently collected biological data, of course, might winsomely convince an interlocutor who honestly didn't already know this basic fact of human life. But since there are virtually zero honest disbelievers in the fact of two biological sexes, your data and the time you spent to acquire it will have been misspent on fools. Retrogrades' time efficiency and individual reputations will improve sharply upon the habituation of the well-timed, well-placed guffaw of unmuted derision.
And that was Rules for Retrogrades, 40 Tactics to Defeat the Radical Left by Timothy J. and David R. Gordon. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Mossad.
Rome, October 1972. Morning bells echo across Piazza Annibaliano as three Catholic nuns walk slowly toward an apartment building. They carry breviary books and wear heavy Dominican habits. Heads bowed, lips moving in prayer. Italian intelligence has no idea this is a Mossad hit team. One of the nuns counts steps. 23 to the doorway. Another checks the street reflection in a shop window. Under the cloth are suppressed Beretta Model 70 pistols, already chambered. In less than 60 seconds, a Black September commander will be dead, and the killers will vanish behind Vatican diplomatic plates. This is the story of how Israeli intelligence operatives disguised as nuns assassinated Rashid Wael Mansour in the heart of Rome. Rashid Wael Mansour was born in Nablus in 1941, during the final years of the British Mandate. The 1948 war displaced his family to refugee camps outside Amman. By age 26, Mansour had developed a singular talent, creating infrastructure that left no trace. He didn't plant bombs or pull triggers. He built networks that allowed others to operate invisibly across European borders. After the 1967 Six-Day War shattered Palestinian military capabilities, militant organizations fragmented and reformed. Black September emerged from this chaos as Fatah's deniable operational arm. The group took its name from the Jordanian military's crushing of Palestinian forces in September 1970. Unlike traditional guerrilla groups, Black September operated as a decentralized network of cells conducting spectacular attacks designed for maximum media impact. Their defining operation came on September 5th, 1972, when 8 operatives seized Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympic Village. The siege ended with 11 Israeli athletes dead, 5 Palestinian attackers killed, and 3 captured. The attack dominated global news cycles for weeks. It also triggered an immediate strategic response from Israeli intelligence. Mansour's role in Munich was structural rather than tactical. He had arranged safe houses in Frankfurt and Munich 6 months before the attack. He coordinated document forgery for 3 of the assault team members. His network provided escape routes through Italy that were never used. Israeli intelligence, conducting post-operation analysis through October 1972, identified Mansour as what they classified as a Category 2 target. Not a trigger puller, but a force multiplier whose removal would create operational paralysis across multiple cells. Associates described Mansour as methodical, never impulsive. A Jordanian intelligence officer who had monitored him before his move to Europe noted his pattern of living in modest apartments, avoiding Palestinian community gatherings, and changing residences every 8 to 10 months. This behavioral profile made him operationally valuable. It also made him extraordinarily difficult to locate. Mossad's European station had tracked fragmented intelligence on Mansour's movements since early 1971, but lacked consistent location data until August 1972, when a signals intercept placed him in Rome. By late September 1972, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir had authorized what would later be called Operation Wrath of God. The doctrine behind the campaign was deterrence through inevitability. The logic was straightforward. If planners and coordinators could never feel safe, operational tempo would slow, trust networks would fracture, and organizations would consume resources on internal security rather than external attacks. The policy represented a fundamental shift from reactive defense to proactive elimination. The obstacles facing Israeli intelligence were severe. Italy maintained diplomatic relations with multiple Arab states and would not extradite Palestinian militants. Rome's dense urban environment created surveillance challenges. Vatican City, an independent state within Rome, created jurisdictional complexity. Certain streets fell under Vatican authority, creating legal immunity zones where Italian police had limited operational freedom. Black September cells throughout Europe expected retaliation after Munich and had increased their counter-surveillance protocols. Additionally, any operation on European soil risked diplomatic crisis if operatives were captured or if civilian casualties occurred. Despite these challenges, planners identified a critical vulnerability by early October. Mansour had established a routine. Intercepted communications indicated he felt secure in Rome, believing the city's legal complexities would deter Israeli action. Surveillance teams operating from a rented apartment near Piazza Annibaliano documented his movements over 12 days. Mansour left his building each morning between 0800 hours and 0830 hours. He walked approximately 400 meters to a cafe, purchased a newspaper, then returned. The pattern held for 9 consecutive days. On October 10th, 1972, Mossad's Rome station chief transmitted an encrypted message to Tel Aviv. Window confirmed. Authorization requested for kinetic action. The authorization arrived within 18 hours. The operation would be executed by a specialized unit designated in internal traffic as Unit Q. Planning shifted immediately to execution phase. During the operational planning sessions in early October, the lead operative, referred to in debriefs only as Operative 1, experienced what Mossad psychologists later categorized as anticipatory dissociation. The legend being constructed required him to move, speak, and think as a Catholic nun for periods extending beyond the actual operation. During a rehearsal in a safe house outside Rome, he found himself unconsciously making the sign of the cross when passing a church. The gesture was unplanned. In the post-operation psychological assessment, the evaluator noted that successful deep cover requires temporary personality fragmentation, but that such fragmentation carries cognitive costs that manifest weeks or months after an operation concludes. The mission continued without modification. Intercepted communications from October 8, 1972, reveal Mansour discussing his daughter's upcoming 7th birthday during a brief phone call to Amin. He mentioned purchasing a children's book in Italian to send home. Analysts noted nothing operationally relevant in the conversation. The book was found in his apartment after the operation, wrapped but not yet mailed. When Italian authorities inventoried his personal effects, the package remained unopened in an evidence locker for 16 months before being returned to his family. By October 12, 1972, the operation entered its execution phase. Mansour had maintained his morning routine for 14 consecutive days. Mossad's surveillance coordinator assessed probability of pattern continuation at 87%. The weather forecast predicted clear conditions. The window was 48 to 72 hours. The infrastructure for the operation was constructed across 6 days in early October. Mossad logistics officers, operating through a cover company registered in Luxembourg, acquired 3 Dominican-style habits from a religious goods supplier in Naples. The habits were selected for their heavy fabric and floor-length design, which would conceal shoulder holsters and allow freedom of movement. Each habit was altered by a tailor in Florence, not a Mossad asset, but a civilian contractor told the garments were for a theatrical production. The modifications included reinforced inner pockets and slightly widened sleeves to accommodate weapon draw. Cover identities were built using a technique Mossad called ecclesiastical camouflage. Forged documents identified the 3 operatives as members of a missionary order, traveling from a convent near Assisi to Vatican administrative offices. The Vatican transit letters, created by a document specialist working from photographed exemplars, included authentic-looking stamps and signatures copied from legitimate correspondence obtained through a separate intelligence operation 6 months earlier. The letters would not survive detailed Vatican scrutiny, but they were designed only to pass visual inspection by Italian police if questioned during movement through the city. Weapons were Beretta Model 70 pistols in .22 caliber, fitted with custom suppressors manufactured in Tel Aviv. The .22 round was selected for specific operational characteristics: minimal recoil, allowing rapid follow-up shots, reduced muzzle flash in daylight conditions, and lower acoustic signature even without suppression. The suppressors reduced gunshot noise to approximately 110 decibels, comparable to a hammer striking wood. Each pistol was test-fired at an indoor range outside Rome to verify suppressor function and cycling reliability. Ammunition was subsonic hollow point, designed to maximize tissue damage while minimizing overpenetration risk in an urban environment. Communication systems relied on a technique called dead drop signaling. A fourth operative, designated as the surveillance coordinator, maintained position at a cafe with sight lines to Mansour's building. Each morning from October 8th through October 11th, this operative logged police patrol cadence, tram arrival intervals, and pedestrian traffic density. Data was recorded in a pocket notebook using a basic substitution code. Each evening, the notebook was left in a hollowed-out copy of an Italian newspaper at a predetermined location. The execution team retrieved the information within 2 hours. No electronic communications were used within Rome's city limits. Escape routes were planned using Vatican jurisdictional complexity as the primary asset. A rented Fiat 124 sedan carried diplomatic license plates obtained through an arrangement with a friendly embassy, identified in declassified documents only as Embassy X, likely a small African nation maintaining cordial relations with Israel. The plates would not withstand diplomatic verification, but would create hesitation among Italian traffic police, buying crucial minutes during exfiltration. The vehicle was positioned each morning at 0700 hours on a street segment that fell under Vatican Traffic Authority. The boundary line was marked by a small brass plaque embedded in the cobblestones, invisible unless you knew to look for it. Once the vehicle crossed that line, Italian police jurisdiction ended. The team consisted of 3 execution operatives and 1 surveillance coordinator. The execution operatives were selected based on physical profile: height between 160 and 170 centimeters, slight build, clean-shaven faces that could pass as feminine at medium distance when framed by a habit. All 3 had completed Unit Q's specialized training program, which included instruction in religious behavioral patterns, how to hold prayer beads, the rhythm of walking meditation, proper hand positions when carrying liturgical texts. Each operative knew only their specific role and the identities of their immediate partners. The surveillance coordinator knew the execution team's faces, but not their real names or operational histories. This compartmentalization meant that if any single operative was captured, the maximum compromise would be limited to 1 phase of the operation. The planning consumed 8 days. By October 11th, all elements were in position. The execution team had 72 hours before Mossad's Rome station chief would abort the operation due to pattern staleness. The assessment that Mansour's routine had persisted long enough that its continuation could no longer be assumed. October 12th, 1972. At 0740 hours, the surveillance coordinator entered the cafe across from Mansour's apartment building. He ordered espresso and positioned himself at a window table with a copy of Il Messaggero. Through the window, he had direct line of sight to the building's entrance. Morning traffic had begun to build: delivery trucks, early commuters, a street sweeper working methodically along the gutter. The coordinator noted 2 municipal police officers walking their regular route, passing Mansour's building at 0752 hours. Based on 12 days of observation, they would not return to this sector for minimum 90 minutes. Over the next 20 minutes, the coordinator watched the building entrance. At 0806 hours, an elderly woman emerged, walking a small dog. At 0809 hours, 2 men in work clothes left together, likely heading to a construction site. No sign of Mansour. The coordinator made a notation in his newspaper margin. A small mark that would mean nothing to a casual observer, but told the execution team, waiting 3 blocks away, that the window remained open. At 0812 hours, Mansour emerged from the building entrance. He wore a dark jacket and carried a leather satchel. His pace was unhurried. The surveillance coordinator observed him turn left, walking toward his usual cafe route. The coordinator stood, left exact change on the table, and walked outside. He crossed to a telephone booth on the opposite corner and lifted the receiver without inserting coins. This was the signal. 3 blocks away, the execution team saw the coordinator standing in the telephone booth and began moving. The 3 operatives, dressed in full Dominican habits, had spent the previous 40 minutes in a rented ground floor apartment. They emerged onto the street at 0813 hours. Their movement was synchronized, but not obviously coordinated. One walked slightly ahead on the left side of the street. 2 walked together on the right side, 20 meters behind. They moved slowly, heads lowered, hands folded in, prayer position. One carried a rosary visibly. Another held a small breviary. The third had hands clasped empty. Under each habit was a shoulder holster containing a loaded Beretta Model 70. Each pistol had a round chambered and the safety off. Draw to fire time had been rehearsed to 1.2 seconds. Mansour walked at steady pace toward the cafe, 400 meters from his apartment. He was unaware of the 3 figures in religious dress converging on his position from behind. What Mansour didn't know was that Israeli intelligence had identified his morning routine down to the exact number of steps he took before checking traffic at the intersection. At 0814 hours, a complication emerged. A municipal police car turned onto the street and idled near the curb, approximately 40 meters from Mansour's position. The execution team immediately assessed the situation. The lead operative slowed pace, allowing the other 2 to close distance. They could not abort at this stage. They were already committed to the approach vector, and braking pattern would draw attention. The decision point was binary. Compress the timeline or abort entirely. The patrol car remained stationary for 90 seconds. The officer in the passenger seat was writing something on a clipboard. The engine idled. Mansour continued walking, now only 60 meters from the execution zone. The team compressed the timeline. The habit worked exactly as planned. No one looks twice at nuns in prayer near a Catholic church. The patrol car pulled away at 0814 hours and 28 seconds. The window reopened. By 0814 hours and 30 seconds, Mansour reached the small entryway of his target cafe. The execution team had closed to within 15 meters. The lead operative crossed the street at an angle, blocking sight lines from the cafe interior. The other 2 accelerated pace, still maintaining the appearance of unhurried, religious movement. Mansour's hand reached for the cafe door handle. At 0814 hours and 32 seconds, the 3 operatives formed a loose triangle at 2-meter distance from Mansour. The breviary books dropped to the pavement. The hand movement was simultaneous. 3 right hands reaching into habits, drawing suppressed Berettas in one smooth motion. Mansour turned at the sound of the books hitting stone. His expression showed confusion, not alarm. He had not yet processed what was happening. His mouth opened as if to speak or shout. The first round struck him in the upper chest before he produced sound. The suppressor reduced the gunshot to a sharp crack, similar to a wooden pallet breaking. Pedestrians 20 meters away did not immediately recognize it as gunfire. 12 rounds were fired in under 4 seconds. The operatives aimed for center mass, chest, and upper abdomen, following training that prioritized rapid incapacitation over precision. The Andawuti fought .22 hollow point rounds tumbled on impact, creating wound channels that destroyed lung tissue and severed major blood vessels. Mansour collapsed backward against the cafe doorway. His legs folded, he dropped to the pavement in a seated position, then fell sideways. Blood began pooling beneath his torso. Elapsed time from first shot to collapse, 3.8 seconds. No words were spoken during the engagement. The 3 operatives separated immediately, moving in predetermined directions. The lead operative walked east, turning the corner within 12 seconds. The other 2 walked west together, maintaining the appearance of 2 nuns, leaving an unpleasant scene. They did not run. Running would have triggered pursuit. Their pace was brisk but controlled, the movement of people seeking to distance themselves from violence without appearing guilty of causing it. Within 45 seconds of the shooting, all 3 operatives had converged on the Fiat 124 parked 2 blocks away on Vatican-controlled street space. The habits were removed in the vehicle and placed in a canvas bag. Underneath, each operative wore civilian clothing, slacks, simple shirts, unremarkable. The driver, a 5th team member who had maintained position with the vehicle, started the engine as the operatives entered. The vehicle pulled into traffic at 0818 hours, crossing into Vatican jurisdictional lanes within 20 seconds. Italian traffic police observed a diplomatic-plated vehicle leaving the area, but had no immediate cause to stop it. Jurisdiction ended at the brass boundary marker. The vulnerability exploited was absolute trust in religious immunity and the legal complexity of Vatican territorial authority. While the execution team moved toward exfiltration, the surveillance coordinator remained at the telephone booth for exactly 3 minutes, maintaining his cover as someone making a phone call. At 0817 hours, he hung up the receiver and walked calmly toward a bus stop 4 blocks away. He carried the morning newspaper folded under his arm. He boarded a bus at 0823 hours and rode it to Termini Station, where he purchased a train ticket to Florence using a false Italian identity. He would remain in Florence for 6 days before exfiltrating through Switzerland. The Fiat 124 followed a pre-planned route through Vatican-adjacent streets, then entered a parking structure near Villa Borghese at 0832 hours. The vehicle was abandoned. The diplomatic plates were removed and placed in a storm drain 3 blocks away. The canvas bag containing the habits was left in the vehicle trunk. The weapons were separated. Each operative carried his own Beretta in a shoulder bag, walking separately through the park before regrouping at a safe house in the Parioli district at 0915 hours. The entire execution phase, from Mansour emerging from his apartment to the team reaching the safe house, had consumed 63 minutes. At 0816 hours, the first civilian reached Mansour's body. A cafe employee had heard the sharp cracks and stepped outside to investigate. He found Mansour lying in blood, still breathing but unconscious. The employee ran back inside and called emergency services. An ambulance arrived at 0823 hours. Mansour was pronounced dead at 0826 hours before reaching the hospital. The cause of death was exsanguination from multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and abdomen. Bullet fragments recovered during autopsy would later be identified as .22 caliber. By 0830 hours, Italian municipal police had cordoned off the area around Piazza Annibaliano. Investigators found 12 spent casings, all .22 caliber, scattered within a 2-meter radius. Witnesses reported seeing 3 nuns near the scene moments before the shooting, but descriptions were vague. Dark habits, heads covered, moving quickly away from the area. No one reported seeing weapons. The breviary books left on the pavement were traced to a religious goods supplier in Naples. But the purchase had been made with cash 2 weeks earlier, and no records existed identifying the buyer. Italian intelligence services, including SISMI, understood within hours what had occurred, but lacked leverage to act. The operation bore signatures of Israeli methodology: precision targeting, rapid extraction, religious camouflage. Officially, the case remained unsolved. Investigators pursued multiple leads that ended in dead ends, suggesting a level of operational sophistication beyond criminal organizations. The Fiat 124 was discovered in the Villa Borghese parking structure on October 13th. Forensic analysis revealed the vehicle had been wiped clean of fingerprints. The habits found in the trunk were similarly sterile. The diplomatic plates were never recovered. Israeli government officials issued no statements regarding Mansour's death. When questioned by journalists, spokespersons maintained that Israel did not comment on intelligence matters. The denials were transparent to those in the intelligence community. But transparency wasn't the point. The message being sent was not deniability, but inevitability. That participation in operations like Munich carried consequences that would reach into any city, behind any border, regardless of legal protection or diplomatic complexity.
And that was the Mossad. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.